and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the keys to making money with spring wheat is grass control. Killing any grassy weeds is so critical for yield. We'll show you the best ways to do it today.
We're also going to talk about some of the changes that have occurred this spring with fertility based on, hey, last fall was a really wet year. So a lot of people are asking about what should I do for spring strip till? We're going to talk about that today.
We've got all that, plus a tough to control weed of the week. I know you can identify this one, but can you get it under control? We'll give you some ideas later in the show. But first, here's our farm basics.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
One of the most requested topics we get here at Ag PhD is from farmers. They say, can you talk to non-farmers about all our costs to farm? And from non-farmers, they also ask about this just in a little bit different way, but everybody's just kind of curious, what are things like on the farm? Because you may have heard that times are kind of tough, and yes, they are. So we're going to explain that today. So what we've got, both Darren and I have this sheet of paper that we used a year and a half ago to do this same topic here at Ag PhD. It was, what are our costs to farm? And basically, I'll just give you the very quick summary. This is for our region where we farm. We farm in southeast South Dakota. And in our area, it's very common for soybean yields to be about 40, 45, and corn yields to be about 160, 170. Well, we even figured, like on our farm, and this would be a little low for us, but still, we figured 200 bushel corn, and we figured 60 bushel soybeans. And a year and a half ago, we figured, okay, if we pay $200 cash rent, we will make no money. And that's a sobering fact when you go, boy, I'm going to get 25% or at least 15% higher than county average yields, and I'm still going to make nothing? What?
Well, that's scary. And so if you're a farmer going into that situation, you're like, wow, how can I cut my costs? Because I still need that yield, but I got to find the costs that just, you know, it's probably not making me very much money. I think I can give up that $10 expense and lose less than $10 worth of income. So this is going to turn out net positive for me.
Or how do we increase our yields? So like I was saying, on our farm, we're fortunate. We're averaging much more for corn and much more for soybeans than this 200 and the 60. So what can we do to either bump yields or cut costs? But just to run through this a little bit, we figured $200 cash rent. Okay, so if you look at, for corn, we figured $3 corn, and granted, today's corn price is higher than that. But $3 corn times 200 bushels, that was $600 income. We figured $200 cash rent. So 1/3 of that was going just to cash rent. And that's by far and away the number one expense. And so when you ask any farmer who's renting ground, well, what could I cut? Well, it's really hard to cut seed and to cut weed control and to cut equipment, to cut labor. Where are we going to make the cuts? I mean, obviously, the farmer who is renting ground is going to say, well, boy, it would sure be nice if the landlord would reduce the rent a little bit. And we absolutely have seen rents come down over the last 5 years because it just has not been feasible to continue to fertilize the ground for the long term and still make some money.
Well, when you talk about that fertilizer, this is one where we see some big cuts, and we see growers saying, you know what, there's some in my soil, maybe I can just mine that soil out. I know I'm going to leave that soil in a lower fertility position going into the following year, but for this year, just to keep my head above water, that's about my only choice.
So just as an example, we put down $63 for soybean fertility. Okay, well, the average farmer around us only spends $5 to $15 in fertility. Now they're removing, $40 to $60 worth of fertility, but they're not putting it back. And that's my whole point here. So if you're a landlord, this is one of the things you've got to take into account. Would I rather have more cash, and when I have more cash, then the farmer's going to deplete my soil for fertility, or would I rather reduce my rent and make sure those dollars end up going toward fertilizer? Either way, that's up to you.
So you mentioned land rent, you mentioned fertility, and then you had said you can't really cut the seed expense. You do need to put seed out there to raise a crop, but you could go away from traits. That's just going to add more to your management.
Okay, when you say it's going to increase your management if you cut back on the seed traits, not only that, but now you're going to have more cost because Roundup is way cheaper than a conventional herbicide, for example. Insecticide is going to, like corn insecticide is 15, 20 bucks an acre if I cut the trait. So you got to weigh those things out. Is it really going to be worth it? Is it really going to save you a whole bunch of money? Well, yes, you can make cuts, but are you sacrificing yield in the meantime if you don't put insecticide out, if you don't use a good herbicide, if you don't use a fungicide? I mean, there are a lot of these things that farmers have to work their way through. So just real quickly, the top expenses that we listed for corn: seed, we put $88, fertilizer, $69, equipment, $75. Those are the big ones there. On the soybean side, we had seed only at $50, and then fertilizer at $63, equipment at $65. So those are the big costs. Well, how are you going to cut those? It gets really difficult. So again, just the main thing we wanted to talk to you about today is just that times are challenging right now on the farm, especially for those who are renting ground. Times aren't bad for a farmer who's owned his ground for years and years and the ground's all paid off. Well, if you have no debt, then sure, things are great. But if you're a young farmer and you've got payments to make on equipment, you have payments to make on land, or you're renting land, times are really challenging right now. So we're certainly hoping for the best as we move forward, and that's why we're here, is to hopefully give you some good ideas on how do you increase yield and do that cost effectively.
Well, one thing that can add to the economic challenge on farms is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a breakthrough seed treatment technology controls nematodes when they attack. Now offering NEMASTRIKE technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NEMASTRIKE technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
Why do I farm? It's just something I've always wanted to do. Something I've known since I was my daughter's age. I think about what kind of farm I'm going to hand over to her. About how I can make it more successful, more sustainable. I talk to other farmers, with agronomists and advisors to help me make better decisions. To figure out what's working for them and how to make it work even better for my farm. Because when you farm, you have a responsibility to keep it growing. To look at a freshly planted field, a newborn calf, even your bottom line. Then ask yourself, how do I help this grow? How can I make it even more productive? I ask myself these questions every day. Because no matter what I'm doing, I'm still a farmer.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
Increase your productivity with Hypro's dual react control system. The dual nozzle body design allows you to drive at the speed you want while maintaining the rate and droplet size you need. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Last fall was really challenging through much of the Midwest. It was very wet, then it turned cold fast, so a lot of people didn't get all their field work done last fall, us included. So we're making some changes going into the spring. We're going to talk a little about spring strip till today.
It's certainly been one of the big topics of discussion around the country this year. What are we going to do about strip till? Because I want to get it done. Now I got to do it in the spring. What am I going to have to change? And then also all the things that go with that, seed bed prep and fertility management. It's a big topic.
All right, let's start with this. Most people are not doing a lot of strip till in the spring, and here's why. Because it's usually wet. In the fall, it's usually a little drier, so it's a lot easier to get those fall tillage things done. We like going out with a strip till machine, either a big coulter or a shank, and going down 8 to 10 inches deep in the ground. That's awesome. But in the spring, by the time your ground is fit 8 to 10 inches deep, you probably should have planted 2 weeks earlier. So what a lot of people are doing is they're using coulter machines in the spring, and we highly recommend that you do that and then keep it much more shallow. So going down in the range of 4 inches, 5 inches, something like that, then you're in much better shape. You can get out there a lot earlier. You can get that seed bed ready. On our farm, for example, what we're going to do is we're going to put out about 10 gallons worth of PK blend, and then we're going to put about 10 gallons worth of liquid 28% with coulters as we go through the field this spring, probably about a day before the planter comes through. The advantage to doing that is hopefully a little bit better seed bed. I've got a better seed bed there, and I've warmed it up just a little bit, so that part's nice. The other thing is then I don't have to carry all that fertilizer with the planter.
Now, when we're talking about this, you may be thinking, all right, how does that influence my seed bed? It's going to be different than if you're doing it in the fall. We don't want to see this great big berm built up because, hey, you're coming right back to plant. So you want to see a little bit of a berm, but not a really high one that would settle out as it would in the fall. Also, you want to be really fussy. You don't want to have an indention. I've seen this too many times traveling around the country where farmers were trying to do a lot of tillage. Like, for example, this spring, man, I got some corn stalks or some heavy residue from last year I got to get through. If you're aggressive with that, make sure you're not pushing too much dirt out where you've got a little valley there that you're seeding into either. So you almost want to see that seed bed pretty flat so you can just come right back in and plant. It's flat to slightly have a little bit of a berm.
The number one thing I'm going to bring up to you about spring strip till is the same thing I'm going to tell you with spring planting. Don't mud it in. If you just wait a little bit longer, hopefully things will get dry enough. But here's the problem. If you create a bunch of compaction out there, especially sidewall compaction, you have now created a very challenging situation for your crop, and you probably are not going to get top yields.
Well, getting the fertility mixed in there is going to be key because on so many farms, fertility was not put on. And here's the other thing, if you're saying, man, this is my strategy, I have to do strip till, it's time consuming and being patient, as Brian mentioned, for wet conditions and other things that you're going to face across that field. You've got to be patient because yes, you're holding up the planter, there's no question. And in many cases, in many farm operations, it's the same guy running the planter as running the strip till machine. So if you find yourself in that boat, you may say, look, I'm going to do one field, plant it. Do one field with strip till, plant it. Or you may just say, I'm getting on that strip tiller until I'm done, and then I'm going to roll with the planter. It's up to you what you do. I think I'd watch and let the rainfall dictate. If you've got rain coming, strip till, and then do your planting right away on that field as you go to try and keep things moving. That would be my suggestion.
All right, here's the last thing that I've got for you. I'll just talk to you about our farm. We've got a lot of ground that was corn last year. It's either going to corn or soybeans this year. Didn't get the tillage done. If I take a look at that in the spring and I go, all right, I want to do massive tillage out there, my odds are pretty high that I'm going to create some compaction in our heavy soils that are very damp in the spring and cold. So instead, what we are doing, anything that was corn last year that didn't get tilled, it's getting strip tilled. That's just the way that we're doing it. So that way I can make one pass, I can get fertilizer on, I don't have to create a whole lot of compaction out there, and I am just tilling those strips. We also really like strip till, of course, because of the erosion reduction that we see, and that is a concern certainly with the hills that we've got. So again, anything that was corn last fall that we didn't get worked, that's going strip till this spring. We don't normally do this because normally we get everything taken care of in the fall. But we had to change our plans based on last fall, so that's where we like the coulter machine and doing it strip till in the spring.
There certainly are some challenges to doing strip till in the spring. It also could change slightly how you control our weed of the week. We'll talk about your weed control strategies later in the show.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance concaves in your combine today.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
Grass control is so critical for spring wheat. We're going to talk about how you can manage it on your farm today.
Let's start with the pre-emerge options. The best thing you can do, in our opinion, for most grasses, is use some Prepare. Now, certainly there are other products that get talked about out there because people will mention VALOR. Well, that's not really a grass product and you have to spray it a month in advance. People will say Zidua, but I'd really kind of like to see that Zidua or ANTHEM Flex used very early post rather than late pre. So Prepare is really my product of choice, but you know, there are also, let me just throw one last thing out, people who will talk about Olympus or the old Rimfire product. You can do that, I just worry about Olympus carryover if you're going to rotate to another crop next year. So for spring wheat, my first choice is Prepare.
Brian mentioned Zidua, and that is a group 15, which means it's a different chemical family than all the other grass products that we're talking about here. We talk about Prepare, well, that's a group 2 or an ALS product. You talk about Olympus, that's a group 2, an ALS product. Our only other family that we're really talking about is group 1s. And so we've got group 1s and group 2s getting used for almost all grass control in spring wheat. And we talk about resistance management and wanting to have multiple effective modes of action. It's a little bit of a challenge in wheat. If you're using that group 2 down, we want to use a group 1 wherever we can effectively post.
Okay, so once again, just so we're clear, Zidua or ANTHEM Flex that contains Zidua should be used early post. If you're going to use it pre, it has to be used very, very, very late pre. So it's not really a pre-emerge option in my book. But if we're going to talk pre, that's where we talk Prepare, and that can be used before or after planting. That's up to you. It does have good burn down activity and real good residual.
All right, so post-emerge, we've got all the ALS options. Now, if you're talking about having downy brome or cheatgrass, this kind of stuff, winter annual weeds, well, we've got to go to a little stronger chemistry. Most of the time in spring wheat, though, we're talking about wild oats as being the worst weed, and you've got a lot of great choices.
Okay, so again, pre-emerge, basically, you just need to know Prepare. Early post, ANTHEM Flex or Zidua. Little bit later post, then that's where we're talking about the true grass killers that we've got for spring wheat that are really good in terms of contact activity. Zidua doesn't give you that. It just has residual. The contact killers are going to be Everest 3.0, which is the exact same thing as Prepare, only it's got a safener for wheat. So you can use that post, but again, Everest and Prepare are both ALS chemistry. Then we start talking about Gold Sky that has some Power Flex in it, another ALS. So Darren mentioned downy brome, cheatgrass. Everest and Gold Sky are going to be much better than Axial or Discover or Next Step. Axial, Discover, and Next Step, those are the ACC ACE chemistries. So if you've got wild oats or you have foxtails, then that's the direction that a lot of people are going.
Another product we should mention is VALOR, which is another ALS grass herbicide, and most commonly we're seeing that with Husky Complete. So you've got Husky plus VALOR, and here's really one of the things that we want to caution you on. If you've got a really bad grass issue out in spring wheat, we want to spray just the grass herbicide whenever we can, because when we start tank mixing broadleaf herbicides plus grass herbicides, it reduces the amount of grass control that we get. We call it antagonism, where the products actually work against each other a little bit. So instead of getting 99% grass control, maybe you get 97, or maybe you get 93. Well, if you've only got a few weeds out in the field, that's no big deal, and you're way better off to save the trip and mix them together. However, if you've got a complete disaster and you say, oh, this is the weediest field I've ever seen, spray the grass herbicide first, wait a week or so, then come back in with that broadleaf herbicide. You'll be very happy that you did.
So once again, we've got ALS herbicides, we've got ACCES herbicides. Those are the two common choices. If you want to get some group 15, Zidua, Anthem Flex contains Zidua also, you're going to have to use that real early post, but just understand that's going to give you residual activity only, no contact activity. We do like residual herbicides though, that really can help you with wheat, but the big thing that we're going to tell you today is spray the grass when it's small and use a pre-emerge herbicide. That should give you better weed control and give you better yields in the end.
Controlling our weed of the week will also give you much better yields. Unfortunately, all those products we talked about are not very effective on our weed of the week, but we'll show you what is coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our weed of the week is water hemp, and it's one of the toughest weeds that we face.
Yep, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to talk about it today, so let's get right to it. With soybeans, we want you to use the 3-Pre program. Put a yellow out there, plus metribuzin, plus a PPO, either VALOR or Authority. That's going to give you a good start.
It's been a total game changer. If you haven't tried it before, try it this year because it's really been working across the country.
And do that regardless of trait. Speaking of trait, I want you to use either Enlist or Extend soybeans because that's going to allow you to spray a growth regulator post-emerge. You can do it pre also, but use that growth regulator dicamba or 2,4-D post-emerge. That will really help you.
In corn, broadleaf control is much easier. You've got a lot of choices here. I like the pre-emerge products that have a combination grass and broadleaf herbicide in them. I like Verdict at the full rate. Then post-emerge, my favorite product, Status. You could even throw in a half-pound atrazine with it if that works in your rotation.
HPPDs post-emerge are really inexpensive in corn, so I get it if you want to use that. But like Darren said with Status, if you can throw in just a little bit of atrazine, that's absolutely going to help. The number one thing you need to know is you've got to use multiple effective modes of action. Find some that have residual. You got to have good contact activity when we're talking post. Water hemp absolutely can be stopped, and you can get 100% of it, but you got to start with your plan right now.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a breakthrough seed treatment technology controls nematodes when they attack. Now offering NEMASTRIKE technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NEMASTRIKE technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
There are 6,272,640 square inches in an acre. We counted. Why? Because we designed the TigerMate 255 field cultivator and 2000 series early riser planter to maximize every single one. So when you create the most level seed bed in the industry and target a nickel-size area to plant a seed and never miss, you'll know in high-efficiency farming, there's one name to count on. Case IH. Rethink productivity. Learn more at caseih.com/everyinch.
When conditions are fit and the timing is right, you've got to be ready to go in the field. So on the next rainy day, or if you've had several rainy days here and you're waiting for things to dry up, be prepared to get as much done as you can. Here's a short list of things you may consider doing in today's Iron Talk. First of all, data. Take any data that you've collected during planting, spraying, fertilizing, harvesting, whatever it is, and get that off your machines as appropriate and save it for future use. Also, get any plans uploaded on your equipment for the work that you're going to be doing once conditions are fit in the field. If you're upgrading to CAN plugs or another feature to automate data transfer, here's your chance to set it up as well. Then supplies. Make sure that you have seed, fertilizer, crop protection, whatever you're going to be using, make sure it's on hand and ready to go. However, don't load your spray tank until you're ready to go to the field, because there are several problems you could have. First of all, settling out of product, deactivation of product, or contamination from other products that you've sprayed in the past. That could be a problem if you put that spray in the tank before you're ready to go. So just wait until the last minute to do that. Cleaning. By cleaning up your equipment very well, oftentimes maintenance issues become obvious to you. Oil leaks, rusty patches that need some touch-up paint or repair, and other things can save you time and money down the road. And finally, maintenance. You always have time for maintenance, grease and lube, changing oil, filters, fluids, adjusting air pressure in tires, ballasting for maximum efficiency. All those thankless jobs that you'll appreciate later when you're not broken down far from home. So spend your rainy days or days that you're waiting for fields to dry up wisely and maximize your work time and free time the rest of the growing season. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.